All right, mates, welcome back. We are going to talk a little bit about what I got going down this week with a couple, caught up on a lot of baits for mates and everything. I'm loving the fact I'm starting to get messages based on the weekend, based on some of the results of some of the guys that landed some fish with some of the custom baits on the Potomac, and then also up in New York on Lake Champlain, as well as down in Virginia on the Shenandoah. And speaking of the Shenandoah, okay, we've got an event this Saturday on the which includes the Shenandoah, the Upper Potomac, the Rappahannock in one event, and then also any body of water in Virginia, Maryland, West Virginia, Tennessee, Missouri. I think there's a couple other states. Smallmouth only. Okay, and so what I want to talk about today, really quickly, is as I'm getting some of these reports back. Is most of people are telling me that that's post spawn, right? And you know, obviously there's still some spawning going on in the Northeast, but down here in the Mid Atlantic, we're basically transitioning from post spawn to then pre summer, which creates what we call like a rut, right? With a lot of catch rates, okay? And so a lot of people during this time, I mean, where I grew up, a lot of people during this time of June aren't really fishing for largemouth bass or smallmouth a lot of times. That's the one time of the year that they'll actually go and fish some other things. And not to take anything away from that, because the bite can be pretty tough in the post spawn. So some of the things I've been working on, and you know, and again, it's a work in progress. Again, that event is this Saturday, coming up on June 18th. There's 2 or 3 events in the region. So check those out on Fishing Chaos and Tourney X. You can just plug in Virginia, plug in Maryland, plug in West Virginia, Pennsylvania, and the events will come up. And I'm kind of struggling in a sense. I've got a couple spots on my home river, literally that's 15 minutes from me. And I fish it consistently 3-4 times a week. And I just can't break through. So it's one of those situations. Do you go to where your comfort zone is, or do you go and explore and find some new water? So that's what I'm going to do this week. I'm going to go out and try and find some new water. And instead of just relying on the Upper Potomac. Now, in this particular tournament, the Upper Potomac boundary cuts off at Harper's Ferry. And man, the bite above Harper's Ferry has been pretty awesome in the last 2 weeks or so. Really post that big rainstorm event we had and flooding that came down towards the Great Falls area, if you're familiar with the DMV. But last year I have not been able to crack 72. So it's been, the bites are there, but just not the quality bites enough for a tournament. So 63, 68, 72, best 5. Not going to catch you a check, probably, in, you know, a regional event for smallies only. So, you know, it's one of those things that you always got to make. You got to gamble, and you got to be like, well, you know, I'm going to go. I'm going to roll the dice, because I know I can catch 25 to 30, 40 fish in the stages and sections of the river that I consistently fish all the time. It's just a matter of if they're not going to be in that 14, 15 plus, you know, in a tournament setting, you know, you got to make some changes. So what we have been seeing and what has been happening in the region in terms of the post spawn and what the bass are biting, you know, going into the weekend for me, and I have no truck with sharing information because, or spots, or any of that. That's just how I was raised and brought up. You learn from everybody in this. And, you know, you can't do that if people aren't sharing information. So, you can always reach out to me and I can kind of tell you where I'm at, what's I'm up, if you see something. Same with all the baits in the videos, called custom baits. So, like, if you see a bait that you're interested in, you can just DM me. You can do that on YouTube. You can do that on Instagram. You can do that on Facebook. JL Scott Fishing and Eats is Facebook. JL Scott Fishing on Instagram, JL Scott Fishing on YouTube. You can find me, okay? And you want to sample something, you want to try something, you want to, you know, a sample of something, just hit me up. I got no problem with that. But so this is what I've been doing, and I've been kind of like dealing with this post spawn. issue, with coming up June, July, on the river. Hot water temperatures are hot, so, their bodies slow down, their behavior slows down, until we get into like a kind of a consistent water temperature, right? The other thing I'm looking for, and I've seen it in different areas, and this could be an opportunity for those fishing in a tournament setting, is the crawl. Finding the crawl. The fish will find them in areas where the crawl may be doing well. Same with grass. I see that all the time on the Upper Potomac. There are parts of the Upper Potomac that are starting to get grass again, and a little bit in just pockets. Now, it's not Susquehanna grass, okay? It's not massive amounts of grass in the middle of the channel, the main river. It's just small little areas, okay? And what I've noticed in the Upper Potomac is if you have that, they will relate to that more than they will relate to rock. Big rocks, big boulders, unless there's like an eddy in the back or an overhanging tree where they can get the water's a little cooler for them, all of that stuff. So, but during the post-spawn, what I'm starting, depending on the morning, depending on what the weather's going to be, depending on what the water temperature's going to be, depending on what I'm seeing, I may start out with the top water, and if I start out with just kind of like, top water, I'll probably start with the chatter early on, and depending on, again, as the morning progresses and the sun comes up, if we're talking bluebird skies, if we're talking no overcast, if we're talking any of that, I'm going to go with some chartreuse and white, okay? And I'll go with the gold blade for that kind of flash. I know a lot of people will use silver in situations like that. I just like the gold blades in that sun morning as it's rising up to lunchtime. I really do. So, and you can determine your own comfort as to what size you want to go with in terms of your ounces. So I will go with that. If I do want to switch to the silver blade, I'll also throw, this is a white silver flake. I'll go with that chatterbait. Now, depending on what happens on Thursday, Friday, I know this a lot with the Potomac. You'll get one day, it'll be kind of like stainy tint. Then it'll clear up a little bit in certain areas. Depending on the current flow and the amount of water, your water level in current flows, okay? Ripples, old dams, whatever, can kind of clear it up or it can kind of muddy it up, right? It all depends on what, for me, where I fish, where Goose Creek kicks in a lot of freaking mud into the Potomac River. The Monocacy kicks in a lot of mud into the Potomac River, and you're fishing for those bass that are hanging out at the mouth. Sometimes they're going to run up into those rivers. Sometimes they're going to run back out into the main river, right? And so that's kind of where you want to start out at. And then work your way either up or back out to the river channel. Most of the bass that I've been seeing have been relating in two key areas, depending upon the conditions. Okay, one, the temperature outside is like in the 65 to 80 degree range. Okay, they're relating closer to the banks, closer to the shorelines. You can work your way all the way up or down depending on how you're coming along the river. If we're in the 80 degree, okay, and I mean aromatic, I'm not talking water temperature. If it's 80 to 90, like the other day we were at 96 on the Potomac River, all the bass relating to the main river channel, okay, in rocks in the main river. What I mean by that is in the middle of the Potomac River. And it didn't matter whether it was a wide area or a narrower area, they were in 3 to 3.5 feet of water in the middle of the river, okay? And so, if I notice that the crawl bite, okay, I got two options. Crawl, forage, okay? Other game species forage, so that's bluegill, crappie, okay? Smallmouth bass, okay? And all that. And I see that, I will try to see if I can get that bite. If I can get that bite, the crawl is abundant, or the crawl is even present in the bottom composition, I will change things up to the jig, okay? And I know a lot of people just kind of like put the jig in the tackle box and left it there fishing chatterbaits all the time. Or I'll even also throw the spinnerbait on the upper Potomac at this time of year, okay? But I'll switch to a pattern, okay, a green pumpkin, orange with a little chartreuse. You got the little soft plastic trailers you can you can be poured and can change these out. I can take the trailer off, okay? Go with that one. Or, depending on the sun, depending on the cloud cover, I could also go with the chartreuse hair as well with the trailer on that and work that along the rocks, okay? Now, if I really get into a crawl bite, I see an abundance of crawl in any part of where I am throughout the day. I'm going to change it up to searching for bigger bites, okay? And I do that by changing to the crawl trailer, okay? This is a bigger bait, bigger profile in the water, looking for that bigger bite, that may be looking for that. And if, again, this is a solid color really for any river system, Shenandoah, Upper Potomac, New River, Maury River, Goose Creek, okay? Or I'll run the standard, okay? I usually tend to like to throw this more in the lower Potomac, but have caught fish on the upper Potomac, okay? I've caught more largemouth than smallmouth, okay? But when I have caught a smallmouth on this bait, it has been an 18. It's been a bigger smallmouth bass, okay? So that covers the chatterbait and the jig normal, right? The normal standard game plan post-spawn, okay? If I see a lot of stuff happening on topwater, and I will throw the chatterbait, obviously, but I'm going to also change up. I'm going to change it up. If they are aggressive, and they can be a lot of times, I'm going to switch, and I will throw that right there. Okay, very narrow, one of the narrow ones. Okay, but let me hear this rattle for you. Love that. It's a very solid bait. Get your hands on this bait. Shoot me a direct message if you're interested in this bait right here. Okay? If you got crawl in your rivers or anywhere around you, solid. You can also add a little bit more red to it in terms of the painting if that's what you would like. But this is a solid bait. Okay? And I'll have this tied on automatically to start, as well as the chatterbait to start out with. That's what's going to happen in the morning. And then my other backup, if I don't see the crawl prevalent, if I'm not seeing that, I will use this crappy pattern. It's a Brian Chapman pattern. Again, it's a one knocker. Okay, more like a one knock, almost a two knock. But it's a little different sound, a little deeper sound. Solid lipless crankbait. But the other thing I will not sleep on, and you should not sleep on, just to take it with you just in case clouds move in, okay? Something happens, a little change, you're working your way down the river or up the river, depending on what you're doing, and you're kind of seeing a little bit, you know, anything can kind of change, okay, with the weather. We know that, right? And most people do not do this in shallow rivers, but it can be highly effective, and that is to switch to the jerkbait, okay? Like a lot of people I know only throw jerkbaits. We have this debate all the time. They only throw jerkbaits in impoundments, reservoirs, big lakes. And I think they're missing bites that they could be getting in rivers. Even smaller rivers, like the Monocacy, smaller rivers. The Upper Potomac gets narrow. Shenandoah gets narrow and shallow in a lot of parts. A lot of people don't like it because they're afraid of getting hooked up, snagged up, and all that. And jerkbaits can be very expensive, and they don't want to run the risk of throwing, you know, $18, $22 jerkbaits, you know, in that situation. And I totally understand that. But, you know, it's been solid, especially in patterns that mirror a lot of the forage that you're going to find. Now, the other big thing for me, and I've noticed this, and it's one of those things where, man, it's feast or famine. You either catch really big smallmouth or you catch 12 to 14-inch smallmouth consistently all day long. That's just true. I had a mate the other day tell me he threw this jig and caught 60 smallmouth bass on the North Fork of the Shenandoah last week. 60. But none of them were more than 15 1/4 in terms of length. But 60 bass, I don't care who you are. You're going out fishing for smallmouth bass. You catch 60 bass, that's a great day, right? But then when we put all this stuff when we're fishing in tournaments, we put all this other pressure and all this other stuff at us like someone it's a bad day, right? It's not a bad day. Like you just caught 60 smallmouth bass, right? That's a great day. But in the tournament setting, people put a lot of stuff on themselves, and then and they want 18s, they want 20s, and we know how that is, and I understand that. So it's either feast or famine. Lots of fish or some lower amount of fish with size, okay? And so, look at that jig. Throw it in the eddies. Easy meal for aggressive smallmouth bass, okay? You've got black. Crawl, right? Mirrors a little bit of the colors of a crawl. Baby crawl. See that brown little lines in it? It's got some shear to it. Okay, and the last two right here. Hares. And then this is one of my favorites. All size smallmouth bass. Okay? Doesn't matter whether it's 8 inches or 20. Chases this jig. Okay? These hair jigs, small jigs, catch big bass. And they don't just catch smallmouth bass. They'll catch largemouth bass. Okay? And so that's really what you're at with the post spawn. Like in terms of, for me, this is what I'm looking at in terms of Saturday. At this point, I got a couple, 6 days, 5, 6 days. See what happens with the weather. See what happens with the water levels. See what happens. I'm going to be out there 2 or 3 times. I'm going to give my other stage and section on the Upper Potomac another shot. Then I'm going to go down and I'm going to test the Shenandoah out. Remember, I grew up in Virginia. I grew up fishing some of those sections that a lot of people don't fish. They just don't. A lot of people probably I imagine a lot of people fish the Rappahannock. I don't think as many people will probably come up for the tournament to fish the Upper Potomac. I think it's going to be a North Fork, South Fork, Rappahannock show for the NVKBA on Saturday. Wish everybody luck for that, in terms of that event. And then the other event, Southwest Virginia Yackers, can fish any of those, any of those rivers in Virginia, West Virginia, Maryland, Tennessee, for smallies, because it's a smallie-only tournament. Both of them are smallie-only tournaments. So that's just a quick rundown on what I'm looking at. If you've got any ideas, post them in the comment section. Send me a direct message. If you saw any lures that you're interested in, I will put you in contact. If they are not mine, if they are mine, we can hook you up with a sample. Let you take a look at it, and get a report back from you and see how you did. See what direction you want to go to. Or if you have any questions about the Upper Potomac or the Monocacy or Lower Potomac, as well as Shenandoah and Susquehanna, shoot me a message, or we'll get on a call together. We'll talk about it. We'll go through all these baits on a call together, and show you the different baits, the different options, the different things that you can do, the different paint schemes you can get, all different sizes, all that great stuff. All right, mates, I hope everybody has a great day. Look forward to another great week here in the Mid-Atlantic region. The weather looks like it's going to be in the 80s for most of the week. No major weather systems moving in. So really looking forward to getting back out there in about an hour. And then fish a lot more this week. All right, mates.